Welcome to the Good Karma Sportfishing Podcast. I'm your host, Captain Ryan Van Fleet.
And welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Melinda Van Fleet. Well, it's a little hot in here today, honey.
I know. Yeah.
And we don't mean it in some, interesting way.
No.
We mean it that our air conditioner crapped out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's every other year, the air conditioning takes a shit. So.
Yeah. So we're doing our best to stay cool. So we thought we would record our monthly joint podcast together a few days earlier than April 1st, because April 1st is Wednesday and today is Saturday.
Yes.
The 27th, right?
Yep, Saturday the 27th.
Yeah. So how's it going, Mr. Ryan?
No, not too bad. It's a breezy day, but it's okay. I've been extremely busy with charters, and when I get a day where I'm home, it's a good day for me to get caught up from the past 7 days on the water.
Yep.
So it takes a lot of work to fix all the gear, fix all the birds' nests. I spent 4 hours fixing a bird's nest yesterday. So the price of braided line is crazy. Everything's gone up. So I do my best to try to save the braid and save the line. But yesterday was a complete loss. So yeah, there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than a lot of people realize. So.
I think you always really appreciate too when someone knows that or recognizes that or learns that, and whether they say something to you, before a charter or when you get an email or after a charter, it's always really cool. I know that makes you really feel a lot better.
Yeah,
that you
it does.
spent the 4 hours trying to get one reel fixed for a charter.
Yeah. I just I really appreciate those clients, and they have a special place in my heart. So when they realize that when something goes wrong with a reel or there's a major backlash, that they really, when they at the end of the day they really what's the word for it? They know what happened, and they are very appreciative that I put in the work. So I guess that's the best way to put it. And when they call for a trip, I'm always happy to take their call, and it's awesome to have them come back.
Totally, right?
Yeah, they're just great folks, and I know who gets it, and I know who don't. So
yeah, well, that's kind of along a gratitude level. And I know I wanted to start out this podcast by saying thank you to everyone that purchased my new book, Confidence Mastery for Couples, A Roadmap to a More Intimate Relationship. And I know many listeners from both of our podcasts purchased the book. I know some folks have already reviewed it on Amazon. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you haven't rated and reviewed yet on Amazon, that is just amazing if you could do that too, because when people read the reviews, then they know a little bit more about how it can help them, because they're going to relate to what you wrote. I mean, think about it. TripAdvisor with Ryan's business. People read all those reviews, believe it or not. And, it just really helps. It helps people make a decision. And this book was written so it could help lots of people. So I just want to say thank you to everybody out there.
Yes, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Both of us. So thank you guys.
Yeah. So we were going to talk today about patterns, because this topic just keeps coming up for me in my mind. I've had 2 instances this past week with family in regards to patterns. And then Ryan and I started talking, and patterns appear in everything, right? Patterns appear in fishing.
Yes, patterns. I live and die by patterns, and I have a special way that I look for patterns, and something I've never talked about. And I'm not going to talk about them today, but in the future I might. But yes, patterns, and more patterns, and that's it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think the older you get, I'm going to say, because I turn 50 pretty soon, the more you start to become even more aware of patterns and start to build the confidence to handle them, whether it's standing in your power and setting boundaries, saying no, changing direction. And I just think it's really an amazing, eye-opening experience, especially if it has to do with family or someone you know, or even work-related, right? And then you start to recognize the patterns of behavior and you start to do a deep dive mentally on where did this come from? Why are they doing this? And trying to really handle it with compassion and see yourself as them, but start to understand for your own self-care, how does that make you feel? And do you want to repeat that same pattern in your life?
Yeah.
You've had many instances like this.
Oh, more than I can count.
Mm-hmm.
More than I can count. And it's, I don't even know where to even start with that.
Well, I can start with something really simple, and that is just the fact that you like to take a nap.
Yep.
And a lot of families, a lot of people are controlling. And I remember when my mom was like, you let him take a nap when we first started dating.
Yeah.
And I was like, let him? Like, what do you mean let him?
I like to nap. If I don't nap, I'm a bear.
He's a grown person.
Yep.
If he wishes to take a nap, then let him freaking take a nap, right? So that was just a pattern that I had to make sure that I didn't fall into in regards to telling you what to do. And it kind of goes with fishing too, right?
It does.
I mean, you've had that.
Yep.
You used to go fishing with your dad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty funny, but yeah.
Yeah. And then it stopped.
Yep. And then it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So anyone out there that may be struggling with situations like that, start to just recognize a pattern in behavior and figure out how you can address that. And there's lots of, tools and tips out there and different things that I've talked about and written about that we're probably not going to dive in on this podcast. We'll keep it more general and topside. But I think just starting to recognize people's patterns of behavior and then starting to process that and see how you feel. Does it sit with you? Are you okay with it? Or do you need to make some changes? And I do believe there's probably lots of guys out there that like to go fishing and their wives might not want them to go fishing as much.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's kind of like for me, it's like the worst, it's tough because I don't like to fish with anybody outside of my clientele. I like to fish by myself. And there's reasons for that. It's just like that over time, somebody develops a pattern that they just can't shake on the water that interrupts fishing. It's tough. So if you have a fishing buddy, you just need to, if there's a pattern there, you need to address it. Otherwise, the relationship is strained.
Yeah, and then you have anxiety around going.
Yeah,
right?
You have anxiety around going. The worst thing that happens to me on trips is when I have patterns where people get on the boat and they immediately point out something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
People need to you need to realize that a lot of work goes into a charter and work goes into it. When somebody steps on the boat and they look around and they see a rod holder that might be out of joint, or they see a lure or something that they don't particularly like, and they start making comments at 5 o'clock in the morning before the trip even goes, that sets the tone for the day.
Well, then that's a trigger.
And it's a trigger.
That's a trigger for you.
Yep, and it's a trigger.
Because they don't know what you've put into the trip.
Yep.
And then they're making a judgment, right?
Right.
And digging. We talked about digging the other day.
Yeah.
Digs. And I would love to know how many of you have grown up with someone digging at you. That would be because I grew up with that for sure from my mom.
Yeah.
Dig.
Somebody always
and even in my adult life.
Yeah.
You're really going to wear that bathing suit? You really need to do that with your hair? Different things like that. So those are digs. And those digs set off triggers, and all of that becomes a pattern.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that kind of stuff is it really bothers me. And I've just learned that now in the morning, I'm like, okay, what's this guy going to say? Sometimes.
Yeah. But we've had discussions about how people really don't know.
People don't really know.
Which is sometimes why on this podcast, just to give a little background too, someone may be, oh, he's just complaining. But really, we're just trying to educate people.
Right.
Because people don't know. Unless you're a boat owner, unless you're a captain listening to this, or a mate, or you're really experienced with charter fishing, 9.9 times out of 10, you are not going to know or understand what goes into a charter. So then you get on, let's say, Ryan's boat and use some of these examples that he just gave. Well, it sets off a trigger and screws up like the energy for the day.
Yeah, the energy of a boat is like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have the right energy for the day.
Mm-hmm.
If the energy's not there, then the guy that actually knows how to fish and hunt the fish isn't going to be at his best. It's a vibe. It's like the biggest, the one thing I learned down here is that the mate really runs the show. Okay? If the mate shows up and when the mate turns off, and the guy is in the tower, when the first thing an old-time captain will tell you, when the mate turns off, the trip's done. Because the mate's the one actually setting the lines, doing everything, and the captain's barking orders from the tower. So if your mate's not mentally in the vibe...
And keeping the conversation going with the client, I assume.
And keeping the conversation going with the client, which he's responsible for... Not the captain, because the captain's in the tower with his feet up, having his coffee, which is the truth. I want you guys to go out the concrete sometime during the sailfish season and keep an eye. You'll know and then watch who's in the tower working. The guy that's in the tower working you'll notice a big difference. The guy that's got his...
Yeah, because it's not everybody, Ryan.
It's not everybody. It's not everybody. But what I'm just trying to say is that, I'm using that as an example, is that when the vibe is done... The trip can sometimes not be the greatest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So a boat's vibe goes a long way. So that's a huge thing with fishing. Not a lot of people know that. So I try to educate that.
Right.
I try to educate that the vibe on your boat, on your buddy's boat, is like, you could fish all day, man. But if if that vibe turns wrong, it's just not good.
Right.
So.
Right. So it's important to have conversations to understand where the root core is, right?
Right.
So having a conversation about, why Ryan says something on a podcast, and then understanding where it stemmed from on the boat, right?
Right.
And then why he may share something. It's to educate, to help lessen future triggers. Because looking at it positively, we're going to assume that someone doesn't know, hence why they said the dig, right? We're not going to assume that you're just a complete jackass. We're going to assume that you just don't know. We're going to hope for that. And so, hence, learning how to communicate and educate someone on the why. Why is it upsetting? Why did it make you angry? Why did it make you sad? Is really, really an important part of confident in conversations. It's crucial. It's crucial. And if you continue to ignore the digs and the things that trigger you, that's when you're going to explode. Like, that's what's going on out there. People are like exploding. They're upset. They have anxiety. And if you learn to understand why something triggered you and look to see what the other person may be thinking of, maybe why they did what they did, and try to have a conversation and come to an understanding, you can help to alleviate some of these things.
Yep. So it's like, for me, I want to make sure that all my gear is in tip-top shape. That's my thing. And when something doesn't, if I feel that it's out of whack, sometimes that's a pattern for me to say, oh man, this isn't right. It's really just bizarre how my brain works.
Why did you were telling me the other day, so why do you want to make sure your gear is in tip-top shape?
So
tell the audience.
Yeah, so I want my gear to be in tip-top shape. So I want the absolute best for my clients. I want everything to perform the way it needs to perform on the water so they get the absolute best trip. When something is off or something is broken, I feel that I feel this feeling that I'm not giving...
Like that you failed.
That I failed. That's it.
But you tried your ass off. So it's really challenging.
Right. Yesterday, there was a trip and one of the reel handles broke. thankfully I didn't have, and I've out of all my trips, out of everything else I mean, I take meticulous care of my gear. I had a reel handle break. That happened. The last time that happened was over 7 years ago. So, and I was like, holy cow. So thankfully I had backup rods and everything ready to roll. But still in the back of my brain, I'm like, okay, why'd that reel handle break? What do I need to do? I'm thinking ahead to other reel handles and how I'm going to like make sure that this doesn't happen for another 8 years. So that's just the way my brain works.
Right.
So,
because you try so hard. So anyone out there that has super high expectations of themselves will understand that.
Yeah.
Will understand that. If someone doesn't, they're not going to understand that. So that's just the difference, in personalities or how you're wired, if you want to put it that way. But Ryan, you have super high expectations of yourself to perform, to over-deliver, to make sure people have a really good time. I do too. I have super high expectations of myself, which obviously then why we're both now entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So.
I guess, I don't know, this might sound pretty odd, but it's with COVID out there and people are really looking forward to their charters as a release. And I know in the past podcasts, I've really kind of like, I really talk about the weather and I've really kind of been like what's the word for it? You guys, some people have said I've complained too loud, but here's the deal, is that what happens is that a person is at home and I've had people that have canceled going outside the country and they're so looking forward to going fishing. And that's what they want to do. They're not coming here just because the people tell me we're not coming here to see the sights. We're coming there to go fishing. So when they come to go fishing and they show up and it's blowing 20 miles an hour and they spent the time watching all the YouTube videos and all this stuff, there's an extra added thing in my brain right now. And I've talked to some clients about this recently, is that I really, in the past, do not like to cancel because of the weather. Now more than ever, I do not, because there's something, and I know how much people are looking forward to going fishing because they've been cooped up, a lot of them, especially in the Midwest where a lot of lockdowns are still happening.
Yes.
And they're watching the YouTube, they're watching the TV, and they're looking forward to going fishing. It's been cold. It's been a cold-ass winter up there. And that's what they're looking forward to doing. And I feel horrible. And this is from the genuine, I feel really shitty, and honestly, when I have to tell them it's blowing 20 miles an hour out of the east with a small craft advisory, and I can't take them out to go to try to catch a wahoo or a big mutton snapper or a sailfish. And it hurts more than it's ever hurt.
Because they're sitting at home really excited to go fishing. And it's like you let them down, even though it has nothing to do with you.
And I feel like I've let people down. I used to be able to like understand about the weather. Okay? There's an extra added thing on me right now where because I have a heart. If I didn't have a heart, it would be different. So, but I have a heart. I want people to I want to give them a shot at something. I want them to be able to go out. I want them to be happy because I know a lot of people, I just know when they call me, they're and then they've been watching the TV, they're watching the YouTube, and I have to tell them, I was like, please lower your expectations. I have no idea what the weather's going to do. And I've had a few incidents this year where it's been not so great because I've had to cancel. Mm-hmm. And I've had some angriness.
Right. So the point is here, it goes into that bucket of seeing yourself as others. So if people can understand why Ryan, it sounds like he's complaining about the weather. So if people give feedback on something, they're like, well, you're complaining about the weather. Yeah, he's complaining about the weather. No, he's not complaining about the weather. It's just that he actually gives a shit about his clients and wants them to come here and be able to go fishing and have fun, especially even more so now with COVID and how people have been depressed, have been locked up at home, various things going on, whether it's death in their family or sickness or job loss. So being able to go fishing is something that people are looking forward to and really excited about. And when he cannot do it for situations out of his control, the weather, then it affects him because he actually cares.
Right. And what that compounds is that now there's more people on the water. And when you're out there and you're on a good bite and you have somebody that's been following you around for 3 weeks and they wreck a bite. And I've had somebody that has looked so forward to going fishing. And then you've got somebody that has lurked you, that has followed you around, and he wrecks it.
Right. Because of their own laziness to figure something out, they have to stalk other captains on the water and try to ruin their business.
Right. So you got the stalkers. And unfortunately, a lot of the stalkers are listening to the podcast. So that's where a lot of that stems from, the whole spot mugging thing. It comes down to a combination of all this stuff, was that I just want these people to have a good time. That's it. That's all I want. I want them to have a shot at good fishing. I don't want, and it's just it. So, and unfortunately, that there's a lot of people out there that bought boats and are new to fishing, but it's like my buddy was telling me the other day. He's like, yeah, they don't realize that when they buy a boat that the GPS spots and the knowledge don't come with the Freeman or the 32 Contender or the boat that you just had built.
And then they think they can easily pick it up by mirroring someone on the water.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way, people. News flash. You have to put in the reps.
Yeah, or they hire a maid, or they hire a captain. I picked up on that really quickly. That's why I am the way I am with vetting people that have boats and all that stuff. But because I want to protect my client that is coming here
to have a good time.
That is coming here to have a good time, that comes and sees me every year, sometimes 3 times a year.
Multiple days booked.
So I put in the reps for them, not for me. I put in the reps for them, and that's the truth. I put in the reps for them so they can have a good time. And when you see a client smile, that is for me, that's more rewarding. I don't fish anymore, personally. I don't fish.
Yes. Well, not in the boat.
Not in the boat. So,
not a charter.
So the other day, the past couple trips, I had a really good client, my new client, and he listens to the podcast. And this is a good example, is that he was so relaxed and so happy to be out there and so grateful for that good weather. And he didn't and I see differences in people. And he owns his own business, works hard, but we get out there, we have a great weather, but we have nothing but seaweed everywhere from the west wind. And those of you guys that know me know how much I hate to pull weed. But I wanted him to catch a wahoo so bad, and I knew it was going to happen. So here's how it went. I pulled weed for the first 3 hours of the morning. And finally the sun came up to where I could see that the whole ocean was covered, and I knew that I was screwed. So I said, let's go take a break. So he's like, yeah, man, sure. So he helped me reel in the lines, and we ran out to a spot. I had a lurker. There's a lurker out there. He's been following me around. Well, the lurker had followed me to this area, and he picked it off, and he was there. So there he was. And I was like, the guy was there. I told him the story, and we got a good laugh. I go, there's the podcast story for you. Here's a dude with no sonar system trying to figure it out in the way. So, and it picked off the spot. So he was there. We blew by him, and we caught a big mutton. And then I was like, okay, so we got our mutton. We got our fish in the box. Are you ready to go back and try for a wahoo? It's time. And he goes, well, what about the weed? I go, don't worry about it. I'll pull weed all day. Your attitude is
Aw.
Great. So I went in, I changed it up where I was fishing. I was literally and I was still pulling weed, and I had to drop down to one rod. Had to drop down to a downrigger rod, and I smacked one. And the rod's bent over, the fish is hooked, And I said, go ahead and reel it in, but you're going to gaff him. What do you mean I'm going to gaff him? I've never gaffed a fish before. I said, I don't give a shit. You're going to get the full experience, and you're going to hit the fish yourself. So he's cranking on the fish, and he got the fish up this side of the boat. I turned the angle. I grabbed the rod, and I said, get the gaff, and you're going to hit him. Well, I've never gaffed a fish. And I said, just act like you've seen everything on TV. And he hit the
force be with you.
I go, if it happens, if it gets off, it gets off. So he hit the fish himself. I said, back up, and he threw the fish on the floor, and the look on his face was priceless.
Aww.
So
that makes it all worth it.
So that made it all worth it, and then we went and we banged off a whole bunch of yellowtail. And that was it. So it wasn't about the numbers. It wasn't about how many. That one fish made him smile. The wahoo is actually harder to catch than a swordfish, and those that do it know. So... And especially that day where I'm pulling weed, and you're doing it by yourself with no mate. So, and I don't want my clients having to pull weeds. So but
gratitude.
It's gratitude, and
gratitude to the fish gods.
He earned that fish. His attitude was superior, and he smiled all day. He asked if he could help, and that kept my vibe up. And my gosh, with all the other shit that's going on, he kept my vibe up, and I probably would have stayed on the mutton fishing. Honestly, I would have stayed on the mutton fishing, but I was like, someone was telling me to go back in there and get this guy's wahoo, or at least try. And so that's the true story. And we got him a nice one, actually, in the middle of the day when they're not supposed to be biting. So, and then, we went yellowtail fishing, and he had an awesome time. So that's the vibe I'm talking about, and the type of pressure that you feel. So it's not about complaining. I've had it's been a very challenging, I shouldn't say rough, it's been a very challenging, it's been challenging since January 1st. So
it's been challenging since August.
August.
It's really August.
Yeah, August.
So. But we're going to leave this on a super positive note, and we really hope that y'all understand the whole thought process around recognizing patterns and then trying to understand what's going on with the other person. Why are they behaving like that? See yourselves as them. Have the conversation versus digs, versus getting triggered. Have some confident conversations to get to the bottom of things. Because for many of you listening out there, you may not have known that is why Ryan talks about some things. So having the conversation and sharing will just alleviate so much anxiety and pressure and bad feelings that are going on in so many people's heads that are affecting their lives, their relationships, their business. Have the conversation. And then I'm going to say thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, let's say thank you. I'm very thankful for everything. Mm-hmm. I really am.
More and more gratitude. More and more gratitude. So gratitude to everyone listening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are always so honored that you spent the time listening to us. It'll be 2 years on Wednesday that I started this podcast, April 1st of 2019. So I thank you to all of my listeners that have been with me since the beginning, and Ryan will be 3 years in August.
Yep.
And you know what? That's a long time because a lot of podcasts come and go. So we are very grateful that you have hung out with us. And if you're a new listener and you don't know us, feel free to connect with me on Instagram, Melinda_Van Fleet, and also on Facebook and LinkedIn. And definitely check out Confidence Mastery for Couples, which is available on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and Audible. Yay! So check that out. And Ryan, how can they get in touch with you?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Good Karma Sportfishing _FL_keys. And also have a private Facebook group. It's called the Good Karma Sportfishing Podcast. It's a private group, so you have to submit a request to join.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then both of our websites have freebies and Yours is a monthly newsletter, and mine is a weekly inspirational email. So check out Good Karma Success Coach and Good Karma Sportfishing, both.com. So until then, have a beautiful kickoff to the month. Yay! It's April, and hopefully everyone's smiling and excited about springtime. Thank you so much for listening.
Yep. Thanks for listening, guys. And remember, anytime you're fishing, it's all good.